I'm outside today because look. Now come on. Look at the irises and the dame's rocket in the garden. So yesterday I got called to an unusual situation. I don't know where to hold this. I got called to an unusual situation yesterday where a few years ago, I'm trying to remember, it was 2 or 3 years ago, it's probably 3 years ago, these people who live a couple of miles from me had me come and do a property consultation to do their whole, to help them plan out their whole landscape and greenhouses and stuff. And so I did that. And then, it was over and whatever. And then a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't talked to them in probably a couple of years. And a couple of weeks ago, they contacted me and said, we would like to hire you to come and plant our garden, and we have some questions. And so I was like, okay. So last night, I went and helped them plant their garden, and I got to see what they had done. And they had really made they had done a lot of things that I had told them to do. I had told them, where they needed to put some retaining walls, and where they should put the trees, and where they should put this, and they had really done it nicely. It was really nice. And they had someone build for them some beautiful 5-6 raised bed boxes, 5 in one spot and 1 in a more shady location. And then they had bought a bunch of plants from me in my plant sale, and so then I delivered them last night and was there until after dark, and we planted their entire garden and made signs, and it was really fun. And they had and I had talked to them originally about the greenhouses, but they had, I don't know, we never discussed it, but they had decided to have someone build them a pretty high-end, expensive greenhouse, and it doesn't, it's not really right for our climate and our zone. And so after and it has just recently been finished, this greenhouse, and it's like, I don't know, maybe a 10-foot by 20-foot greenhouse. And it's got all this, my greenhouses, I only do 365-day geothermal greenhouses. They have no heat, they have no electricity, they have no fans, they have no heaters, they have no electric vents, they have nothing in them. They're completely self-reliant, and theirs had all of that stuff. And as soon as it got done, they put some aloe plants in it and some about probably about $1,000 worth of citrus trees in there. And then the aloe plants had died, and the citrus trees were really suffering, and so we were able to move the citrus trees. I moved the citrus trees out of the greenhouse, and we had a long conversation about what are we going to do with this greenhouse, because it's just not necessarily correct. And they they have big plans in there, and they want to grow. And so I was explaining to them that a greenhouse either has to be designed to be a hot greenhouse, which grows a certain class of vegetables, or a cold greenhouse, which grows a certain class of vegetables, and you cannot do both in the same greenhouse. And the larger the greenhouse is, the colder it is. And so this greenhouse that they have had built is what we call a Crystal Palace greenhouse. And a lot of people where I live in the Rocky Mountains build a Crystal Palace greenhouse. They cost somewhere in the realm of $20,000 to $25,000. And they build a Crystal Palace greenhouse because they think they're cute. They think they look really nice, but they don't hold heat, and they're not geothermal, and so they really struggle in the winter. And they just struggle, those kind of greenhouses. And this greenhouse has a full concrete floor, which a geothermal greenhouse can never ever have. And so it's a struggle. And so we were having to go through some options about some things that we could change about the greenhouse to make it work in a way that is going to benefit them. And I just thought this is a good opportunity to just review with people that information is power, and having good information is what leads to success, and having flawed information always leads to having to redo work or spend more money or spend more time. Because if you have bad information and you're taking actions based on information that is incomplete or faulty or based on someone who is a salesperson, then you're going to, that the person who built their greenhouse from a kit, which I'm sure is from some other company, I guarantee you that person does not have a greenhouse of their own, has never grown in the middle of the winter, doesn't have anywhere near the experience that I do. And so that's why I get called in to help fix this situation, because when they're, probably, I'm going to guess, probably $25,000 greenhouse doesn't function and kills the only two things that they've put in there, cost them all their citrus fruit this year, and their aloe plants are actually dead and their citrus trees were halfway dead, then I get called in to fix that situation, because at that point you you need someone who really knows what they're doing and is not just a salesman and not just building greenhouses, even though they don't love greenhouses, they don't have a passion for greenhouses, and they have no long-term experience in growing their own greenhouses. So it's a hard situation. I'm, of course, really grateful that they called me in because I can help them, but I could have helped. Excuse me. I was just eating beets. So I had a little beetroot in my teeth. I was just helping, I could have helped them $25,000 ago, is my point. And so I just think it's a good idea to review the fact that information is power, and good inspiration, good direction, and success comes from good information. And you need good information in order to be successful with a greenhouse. And along that same vein, one of my very good friends called me a few days ago. What day is it? It's like the 20th of May today, 2025, the 20th of May. And so it was a few days ago, and they said, one of my friends from a state away is here visiting. They live in Idaho, and they have dug the hole to begin their geothermal greenhouse, and they don't really maybe have information, and could we just come and look at yours? And I said, well, just because they're your friend, they can come and look with you, but of course they can't build anything without, they would have to pay for my plans, which costs $400 for the property consultation, and then they could have the plans. So long story short, they came, and it was just the wife, and she toured all of my greenhouses. And I explained to her what was going to happen, because she was kind of telling me about the plans that they were building, that they had for their greenhouse that they had already dug a big hole for in their backyard. And I was explaining to her some information you need to know, like what zone do you want this greenhouse to be? Is it a cold greenhouse? Is it a hot greenhouse? What are you going to grow in there? How are you going to vent it? All of these things. And so she got really excited, and she said, okay, well, we're definitely going to hire you and have you come. And then after she got home and discussed it with her husband, then she texted back and said, well, my husband says he thinks he knows somebody who could help us over here, and so never mind. So, it's just, I wish people would be really careful before they spend thousands and thousands of dollars unnecessarily. Get good information, because people don't want to pay my $400 consultation fee, which will save them $25,000. They would rather spend $25,000 and then pay my $400 consultation fee, and then go and spend the money to retrofit to make the greenhouse work the way it should have worked in the first place. I just think, that's just a little heartbreaking. It is hard when you know so much about something and you definitely know how to help people, And I'm the only person who guarantees results. There is nobody else. I don't know of anyone else in the world who will design you a geothermal greenhouse for as cheaply as I do and guarantee that it will grow 365 days a year. And not only that, but grow what you want in it, whether it's the hot soil vegetables and fruit or the cold soil. It's like, let me help. I have worked so hard to gain all this experience and knowledge, and just let me help. So that's, my thought today. Let's really think carefully and make sure we're acting with good information before we go spend a bunch of money and get results that we didn't want. Those were not the results that we wanted, and then we've got to go back and spend more money and more time to fix it, or we give up and say, oh gosh, I spent $25,000 and I have an oven. Because it's really easy to build an oven, and it's really easy to build a freezer, and it requires a lot of design and knowledge to build a greenhouse that will grow 365 days a year. And I told them, I said, what is the point of spending a lot of money to build a greenhouse that only works part of the time, when you could spend a tenth of the money and have a greenhouse that not only grows 365 days a year, but is guaranteed to grow 365 days a year. So if you can figure out how to say that better to people, please let me know in the comments, because I don't know how else to explain to people that let someone who has worked at this for decades help you, so at least you know what you're getting into, and then when you start in the process, you're getting what you want at the end of the day, because that is success, right? Anyway, okay, friends, those are thoughts. I have another experience to talk to you about, but I'll tell it to you in another video. All right, bye, everybody.